The two greatest modern tragedies for the labour movement can be summed up, I think, in two words: Aurora and Marikana. These were incidents in our history which were shameful and tragic. And they bring to mind, actually, two expressions, two popular expressions. The first one being, "The buck stops here." This was popularized by the American president, Harry Truman, who had a sign on his desk stating this, which actually means that responsibility for the decisions and the actions flowing from them by the executive, the state, rest finally with the president. Now, I think it's a pretty good principle, that, and it applies not just to politicians, but also to trade unionists, to business people, in sport as well. Unfortunately, it's not very often observed, hardly ever in fact, when the decisions and the actions flowing from them reflect badly on the decision makers. And you have then a situation of another expression, passing the buck, trying to blame someone else for your own shortcomings, your own mistakes, etc. And I think we've had a fair amount of that around about Aurora, what happened at the Aurora Empowerment Systems and the Pamodzi mines they took over, and the massacre and the events leading up to the Marikana massacre. Well, over the past just over a week, we've had a court decision and a Commission of Inquiry report, delayed but finally produced by President Jacob Zuma. The court actually found that the buck, as regards Aurora, where 5,300 miners were effectively deserted by Aurora Empowerment Systems. They were left without basic services, without money. One at least committed suicide. I don't know how many others have died, and we'll probably never know the degree of suffering of those miners and their families. The court said the buck stops with the directors. But of course the directors said it didn't. They wished to pass the buck. And we now have another expression that comes into play, and that is, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Here we had a big change at a court level, but what's happened for those miners? The miners are still in exactly the same situation of penury, of desperation as they were before. At the same time, you still have the continued allegations that the directors are continuing to flaunt their wealth while they contemplate taking the matter on appeal. Now, in Marikana, we have a similar situation. Marikana was seen, rightly I think, as a wake-up call to government at all levels, to traditional leaders, to businesses, to mining companies, and to the trade unions. But what's actually happened, this wake-up call? We now have all sorts of allegations about passing the buck, various people trying to pass the buck, who's responsible for what, or as one of the lawyers who was at the commission said to me this week, all we have here is a matter of accusing the low-hanging fruit, the police, and not the fruit from higher up the tree. And at the same time, while this argument is going on, what has happened around the mining companies, the mining towns, the mining slums that surround every mine within our country? Exactly the same situation that gave rise to Marikana in the first place. The desperation, the poverty, the indebtedness. Nothing has actually changed. And until such time, I think, that responsibility is taken, that the buck is accepted as stopping at the very highest level, we're not going to see any real change. And that's a tragedy. And that's something I think I will focus on in my Inside Labour column this week, which you can read on this platform, and on Sunday in the business section of City Press. In the meantime, you might wish to comment on some of the things I've said here. Use the comment section below, or write to editor@fin24.com. That's editor@fin24.com. Until next week, cheers.